Here we go. For one more time, the Baron respawn timer. We have hit the halfway point of the spring split in the LCS, and now we have a pretty okay understanding of who goes where, but still have some difficulties because we got a number one team, and then it's a mess, and then we have like a 6 through 10, and that's pretty definitive down there, but it's still, we're still working it out. And at the halfway point, you figured we'd be more farther along the line to understand the pecking order of the LCS this time around. But even with the LCS lock-in tournament, even with the first 3 weeks of play and the first round robin being completed, we still really don't have this idea of who is going to come out on top, especially going into MSI. Still at the top, we're going to give it to Cloud9, even though they had a little bit of a shaky game against CLG, where CLG decided that they didn't want to win anymore. They just thought they looked good enough, it's time to go. They beat Dignitas back down into their place below Cloud9 in the rankings, and they dropped a pretty one-sided game to TL. But this team's still the best team in the LCS because they need to get the job done. They get the job done. And standing alone at the top of the leaderboard, there's nobody else deserving of this position yet. Coming in the number 2 slot, we're going to have TSM. They dropped the game to Dignitas, but it was at least close enough in the early stages of the game that it would make a claim this team is the next best team in the LCS, closest to Cloud9. A win over EG and 100 Thieves made enough of a statement that they're as close as it's going to get from last week's games to that number 1 seed up against C9. Although 2 through 5, you could make an argument as to who should end up in which position. It's a complete mess down here with all of them having a game over each other. But I still think TSM right now is looking the best with the meta helping them out because of PoE's mid lane control mages. Number 3, we're going to go to Team Liquid. They beat Golden Guardians. They lose to EG. But then they beat C9 decisively. The squad's having identity crisis issues where they just can't decide if they want to be really good or not. The match against Cloud9 was not close, and it looked like it was a first-place worthy team that beat Cloud9. Had they done that all 3 days, maybe they would be a number 2 seed. Maybe they would even be in the number 1 position. But for now, with that inconsistency, they have to have a spot down here in number 3 just because the game against EG was too problematic on their macro play individually that kept them down here at number 3, even if they have moved up 1 spot. Also moving up 1 spot is a team in Dignitas that can't decide if they want to be elite or just a pretty good squad. They had a good showing against Cloud9 with solid macro play, trying to get back into the game, but unfortunately it was just a little too far out of reach and Cloud9 would walk away with the victory. The game against TSM fairly close for the most part, up until Dardoch was able just to walk in and steal Baron and steal Dragon. At that point, it was just a snowball effect. This team is on the precipice of being a great, pure NA team without any imports, and if they keep playing like this, they are going to climb up the ranks, but until they have that consistency, you still have to keep a little bit of an asterisk on them. It felt like it was too much to drop this team from 2nd to 5th after 1 week of play, but after a 1-2 weekend where you drop a game to TSM of similar skill and a game to Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves has to take this slot, especially when the game against GG goes 55, 60 minutes almost. You have 4 Barons, 3 Elders, and 6 items virtually across the board. It's a game that 100 Thieves probably should have been able to get back into, but backs against the wall, they couldn't step up to the challenge, they couldn't get it done. They should not get used to being a middle-of-the-pack team. The top 5 is a hot mess outside of first place, but because of this week's performance, unfortunately they're going to be the ones with the short end of the stick going to 5th place. Everything below the top 5 line is where everything starts to make sense. Evil Geniuses comes in at the number 6 slot, and everything's sane and stable down here. Beating Team Liquid puts them back on the line of this team's kind of good sometimes, most of the time, but they're not quite consistent enough to be considered a good team. They're just outside of that sort of area of expertise. They got a little overactive against TSM, ended up with some team fight losses that they probably shouldn't have taken, but they at least got a confidence booster in a game against CLG to give them a 2-1 weekend. Immortals also getting a confidence booster in a game against CLG that was fairly simple and one-sided, where we saw Revenge hit the Flame Horizon at 30 minutes over Finn. That would eventually lead them over into victory with his Renekton play. They also had a game against 100 Thieves that I respect the Draven pick for. Had it been pulled off, they would be geniuses, but it comes off as greedy when it didn't work out, and the fact that Raze was virtually a non-factor, not able to cash in on his adoration stacks for a majority of the game. And the game against FlyQuest, pretty resonant sleeper, back and forth, that was just rather uneventful until somebody won and somebody lost, and Xerxes was just able to horse around enough on the Hecarim that they'd win, good enough to get the job done. On the other side of the equation, the team that fell asleep against Immortals, they fall to 8th place this week after only getting their win over Golden Guardians. It's better than 100 Thieves. They at least recognize the weaknesses that Golden Guardians brings to the Rift, in the sense of just picking on top and jungle, who are at the bottom of the leaderboard for KDA and the most deaths in the league. But otherwise, this team is rather lackluster in their other two games. There wasn't anything super flashy about this squad, not that there really needs to be, but they just don't seem to be a go-getter, a proactive team on the Rift, as much as they are outside of it with their proactive environmental missions. It was a short-lived week where Golden Guardians fell to last place, but a win over 100 Thieves guaranteed they get out of 10th, at least. There's still major concerns over how often Niles and Iconic are getting killed and how they often get extended, overextended, and dying, and how this team is lining the bottom of the KDA stats in the entire league. At least Stixxay knows well enough how to scale for late game on a Sivir comp when just wait for 5 items and then win, and that's good enough for them to get a victory over a team that probably should not have lost to this team. But either way, it's going to be a highlight of the season for Golden Guardians and a scar on the season for 100 Thieves, and you take wins wherever you can get them. Broxah finally showing up was not enough for CLG, falling back into 10th place after an 0-3 weekend. They had the game against Cloud9 in their hands, but they could not quite finish it off, unfortunately falling victim to the far too common tale of CLG throwing a lead this year. And with the other two games being rather lackluster, this team has to fall into the 10th position. The question marks around RJS and Pobelter, with RJS playing for the Academy team in the UGP this past week, is making it curious if this is the time now, with CLG having a full 5 roster, getting their scrims in, might start to make a name for themselves in the second round robin of the LCS. And now we're going to get into the schedule breakdowns. I have no idea. I had so many takes of this one because there was just so much going on, and I wanted to make sure that I hit the main points of this, and I kept messing up because I don't know how to read. So I don't know exactly. I think the timing this week was actually not too bad. But now we get into our schedule breakdown for this. Cloud9 starting at the top. I expected Team Liquid to be their biggest challenge last week, and I was right in that sense. I just didn't think it'd be that far to the side of Team Liquid. This time around, it's going to be 100 Thieves that offers that challenge, but expectations should be another 3-0 for C9. TSM, I said they'd get a 2-1, expecting a loss to 100 Thieves, but Dignitas was the one to cash in. Dignitas being a pleasant surprise for NALCS right now. Probably another 2-1 this week, facing off against TL, CLG, and FlyQuest, with Team Liquid this time being the team that offers most trouble for TSM. Speaking of, going down to TL, realistically could be a 3-0, but they are in the same boat as TSM, where there's that one game, the TL-TSM game. The winner of that game probably takes a 3-0, and the other one's going to get the 2-1. But this is going to be a really good Friday matchup to watch. Dignitas facing off Immortals, 100 Thieves, and CLG should get a 3-0, and this should be a team that they implement themselves at the top of the leaderboard, getting a perfect weekend this weekend, and this should be for padding the stats to ensure that they still belong in the conversation for one of the best teams in the LCS. 100 Thieves gets CLG, Dignitas, and Cloud9 this week. Might see another 1-2, which would be absolutely horrible for the morale of the squad after starting so well, but if they get another 1-2 this week, definitely going to be a problem, and conversations going to start to be had about maybe everybody overhyping this team going into the split. If they don't clean it up in the game versus Dignitas going to be the team that definitely is going to cement themselves up there, and question marks are going to start to form around this team. EGE with FlyQuest, C9, GG should be able to 2-1 if they don't play with their food, which we've seen Jizuke do a couple of times, taking a couple of unnecessary deaths to the towers. So this team should be able to realistically 2-1 with the loss coming to Cloud9, but this team, you never know. Immortals, it's a 1-2 weekend. Dignitas, Golden Guardians, Team Liquid. They lose to Dig, they lose to Liquid. They should beat GG. FlyQuest with EG, TL, and TSM, they got a best chance to get their one win against Evil Geniuses because of that inconsistency as I talked about. Otherwise, it's going to be chalked. TL and TSM are too active around the jungle and around objective play that FlyQuest just doesn't have an answer for it. Jose Diodo has been rather unimpressive playing around objectives, so I can't expect a lot out of a FlyQuest team this weekend. Golden Guardians, with C9, IMT, and EG. They should shoot for a 2-1 with consistency against Immortals and Evil Geniuses because of what we saw against them playing against 100 Thieves. You can expect a loss versus Cloud9 because that's just what should be naturally expected playing against C9 now. But with the inconsistency and unimpressive play from Immortals and Evil Geniuses, this is Gold Guardians definitely could sneak away with a 2-1 here. And CLG with 100 Thieves, TSM, and Dignitas. 100 Thieves trying to bounce back here this week. Is going to be out for blood, so expect that one to be a tough game for CLG. TSM looking to be the best team in the LCS, and Dignitas looking to prove themselves as one of the best teams in the LCS. This CLG squad got the short straw this week on the scheduling, but just bank on the practices and scrims in the last week that it's going to be enough to be a close competition. I mean, you got Brox in, potentially Pobelter coming back. That's knock on wood, the rumor around the streets, but not going to be good. Looking for summer split, CLG now looking forward past the midseason playoffs. This is a squad that's what should be happening. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the LCS. There's going to be a lot more going on. I'm going to continue to do these weekly power rankings as well as expectations for this. I'm going to be trying to start filming more consistently my league and stuff, working title, podcast, vodcast, whatever it is, whoever I can get in with that. On day of recording this, on the 24th, I'm going to try to do another one tonight, if not tomorrow, so I can at least release it here prior to the next week of play. But this video should be going up tomorrow morning, Thursday morning on the 25th, so that I get that out at least before that. But this recording is 24 minutes long and significantly longer than I expected it to because I had to do so many takes, which means this editing is going to be longer as well. But thanks again for watching, everybody. The Baron Respawn Timer. I hope I did pretty good on the timing this week. Tried to keep things rather concise. I've been rather busy as well on casting outside of this, so I'm doing my best I can, but I'm virtually doing stuff like 6 days a week now. I'm filling my schedule up. I'm trying to keep myself busy here as times get weirder and weirder. Thanks again for watching. All my socials and stuff are going to be down below. I do stream my League and Stuff podcast, and then I re-upload the VODs onto my YouTube channel. You can find it here as well. My Twitter and my Instagram down below. I don't hardly ever post on Instagram, but I make all of my announcements on Twitter and stuff as well. So if you want to follow me, keep up to date with everything, it's all going to be down in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.